And after a long wait following the failure of Mafia 3, 2K is offering us the new installment at a price of $50, promising that this won't affect the quality of the game. So, did the game's quality really remain unaffected by the price? And is the game actually worth trying out? That's what we'll find out in today's review. But before we start, please make sure to like, subscribe, and leave your opinion in the comments and tell us what you think about the game. Our review of the game is divided into 3 parts. The story, which gets 4 points because it's the most important aspect for me in a game. Second, the gameplay, which gets 3 points. Third, the graphics, which also get 3 points. We'll start with the first aspect, which is the story. The events of the game's story take place in Sicily in the early 20th century. And this is the first time the game takes place outside of America. Our story begins with Enzo, a worker in a sulfur mine whose circumstances develop until he becomes one of the most important members of the Mafia in Sicily. He suddenly moves from a life of poverty to a life of wealth, facing enemies and a wide-ranging dramatic story involving Isabel, the daughter of the gang leader Don Torishi. From this, a forbidden love story develops because of the huge class difference between them, along with the many rivalries Enzo encounters and the problems he faces throughout the story. And that's the story in brief, without any spoilers. The story has really beautiful depth and takes you on a truly enjoyable experience. But there are some drawbacks. The first downside is that the story takes a very long time to get you into the events. It took me almost 2 hours before I got to the important events, and the game actually started to become enjoyable. Not to mention some predictable events. Also, the main character, Enzo, isn't particularly impactful. He's not one of those characters you'll remember in the future. But that doesn't mean the story isn't good. It has many unique aspects and earns a rating of 3.5 out of 4 from us. After such a wonderful story, let's move on to the worst aspect of the game, the gameplay. The game took a really nice direction, one that I had honestly grown tired of lately, which is the open world in games, especially after the failure of the open world in Mafia 3. But here there's another problem because you're in a closed world, but it doesn't offer a unique combat style. Literally, all the fights are almost the same. Even the boss fights feel similar to each other. There's almost no difference between the bosses. It's basically the same combat idea. Just hit and block the attack, and that's it. That's not even mentioning the vehicle driving, which is worse than you can imagine. As usual with Mafia, because Mafia has never been known for good vehicle driving. But in this part, it was particularly bad. There's almost no police presence. The police are practically non-existent here. All the world's characters are like lifeless mannequins. There's no realism or dynamism in their movements at all. The pistols and rifles. Shooting with them was actually nice and satisfying at times. Switching to a linear format is a good thing, but it requires you to add touches that really make the gameplay enjoyable and not repetitive. Because 10 hours of gameplay is a very long time for a linear game, especially since almost 40% or more of the game is just cutscenes. Which means I'm just watching, not actually playing. The company wanted to make a long gameplay experience for $50, but unfortunately they didn't succeed in that because the gameplay failed. My rating for the gameplay here is 1 out of 3, and honestly, it's a 1. That's me being generous, just because I felt they put effort into the game, nothing more. The last point we have is the graphics, which is one of the most important aspects of the game, and perhaps its strongest point after the story is the game's graphics. The visuals are stunning and truly immerse us in the enjoyable atmosphere of the 20th century with incredibly detailed and amazing environments. Not to mention the cinematic scenes in the game are crafted with great precision, and the character design and facial expressions were outstanding. And perhaps one of the main reasons that kept me playing after the story was the graphics. The game's world is visually stunning and really draws you into the story. It's almost what gave the story its value. The first problem we have is that the world feels like a big museum. The graphics are amazing, but they serve no real purpose, especially since the world isn't open. The game world is closed. So this brings us to another point. Why isn't there any use for this beautiful world? But even though the world is closed, there are still some areas where the frame rate drops. And that really surprised me because the game isn't open world, so it should have been easy to fix these issues. Or it would have been very easy to delay the game to fix these issues so that it could be a complete experience. Overall, the game's graphics are very beautiful, but the lack of interaction in the game world affected it a lot. Not to mention the technical issues present in some areas. That leads me to give a rating for the graphics, 2 out of 3. The final rating for the game is 6.5 out of 10. The game is worth trying, but it wasn't the anticipated comeback for the Mafia series, especially after the failure of the third installment. So we thought this would be a big comeback for the game. But the gameplay literally killed the game to a great extent, and the secrecy of the story and the slow pacing of events just to extend the game's length made it lose a lot of its excitement and passion. So that was my personal opinion about the game. If you liked it, please give a like and subscribe and let us know your opinion in the comments. And goodbye.